Hi YouTube, I'm Tammy Thompson, and you are about to listen to my keynote at the 2019 Going Deep Summit. It was an amazing experience. The crowd was awesome. The energy was incredible. You should have been here. And if you were here, thank you for listening. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your energy. Talking about imposter syndrome is tough because it requires you to admit that you don't always believe in yourself. But if you want to overcome it, start talking about it, start acknowledging it, and I hope this video helps.
As I was faced with the question of who could I trust to kick things off on the right note, I came to a very easy, singular answer, and that is Tammy Thompson. Tammy is the executive director of Circles of Greater Pittsburgh. She is one of the kindest spirits that I've ever come into contact with. She has an amazing story that she's going to share with you about overcoming the odds, about helping others, about things that she's learned along the way. And it is, what's been really interesting for me in the multiple times that I've sat down with her, we've gotten into some deep philosophical discussions. We've touched on some subjects that if you were to read the headlines in different news outlets, you would be led to believe that it is warranting hysteria and divisiveness and adversarial nature. And she has an incredibly graceful way of addressing these subjects, of sharing her perspective on that. And it is something that I've taken away with me. I try to cultivate in myself, and I'm incredibly thankful to count her as a friend. And I know that she's pretty excited to be the opening keynote of the second Going Deep Summit. So please, please give a warm, warm welcome to Tammy Thompson.
Good morning. So I don't know who that person was that he was just describing, but I will try to summon her before I leave the stage. One thing, I've been really nervous all week leading up to this, which is odd because I speak for a living. I speak for a living, but it still does something to me knowing that someone trusted me with a message in a room full of strangers who have no idea who I am. And I'm gonna say, as an imposter, because that's my topic today, is imposter syndrome. As an imposter, I've already won because I was for sure that I was gonna fall coming up here today, and that didn't happen, so I already won. And some of you are smiling, so I feel even better. So I wanna talk to you really quickly about Aaron and his team and what he's been able to do here today, but also what I see him doing on a regular basis, which is extremely important to me because it's sort of the same type of work that I do. Giving people a platform to share, in a lot of cases, some very intimate details of their lives. It's not an easy thing to do, but Aaron does it so gracefully. And I'm gonna start with my imposter, describing to you what I see imposter syndrome being. And I've been doing some research, and I'm realizing that it's different for everybody. But one thing that I've learned is that there's a statistic that says that 70% of us suffer from this syndrome. Raise your hand if you think maybe you have a little bit of imposter syndrome in you. Wow, you guys are already winning because most people won't admit it. So this is great. I just realized that there was a name for this very recently, although I've been feeling a lot of these things most of my life. And I, my friends, am not a young woman, although I may look it. I'm old. I've been around the block a few times, as I will share some of my history with you in a little bit. But back to Aaron. When I met him maybe a little over a year ago, I had seen some of his work. I didn't really know, who everybody's podcasting, right? Not a big podcast girl. I wasn't, anyway. And this guy reaches out to me, this young white dude, cute little guy, right? And he says, I really would love to interview you. What do you think my immediate thought was? My first thought, somebody tell me really quickly what you think my first thought was. Why? What do I have to say that this young white kid would be interested in hearing? What could I possibly have to say that would interest him or his listeners? And I was skeptical. I'm sure Aaron might be surprised by that because I was very gracious. And I said, of course, I would love to meet you. Let's talk. But leading all the way up until the day that we sat down, in the back of my mind, I kept saying, why me? What could I possibly have to say that would interest him? Now, this might surprise you because I have been building a career around public speaking. That's funny. It's funny because when I went to college, I had a debate class and a public speaking class. And before every single presentation, I would faint. Literally, fall out on the floor. It got so bad that my professor started having smelling salts in the classroom. This is a real story. I despised public speaking, despised it. And he kept encouraging me and would say things like, but you're a great speaker. And again, I don't believe you, sir. I'm on the floor. How could this be true? This can't be something that I'm supposed to be doing. But consistently, people continue to ask me to come places and talk about things. And what I learned is over the years, I come from a background that is a little gritty. That might be the nice way to put it. I come from a very gritty background. Born into very deep generational poverty. Everybody know what generational poverty is? It's the kind of poverty that you're born into and you settled into it because it's all you know. Everyone in your family is poor. Most of your neighbors are poor. Your friends, your immediate circle are almost always in the exact same situation that you're in. And what happens is you begin to settle into that. Things that might be odd to people who haven't experienced it, you normalize it. And one of the things that you tend to normalize is this feeling that you don't belong anywhere else except these spaces that represent poverty and strife and hard times. So if you get lucky enough to meet people who encourage you to do things like, oh, maybe go to college, or introduce you to opportunity that you would probably never find in your immediate circle, and you do take those chances, there's a big possibility that every single day moving forward, you are going to ask yourself, why me? Why do I deserve to be here? What do I possibly have to offer in the midst of, you guys, I'm just going to say it, because we've been talking for more than 5 minutes, and at this point, we're all family. That's how I feel about people. So I'm going to tell you that this audience represents most of the rooms that I find myself in these days. What do I mean by that? Very few black women in the room. No Muslims in the room that I can detect. I could be wrong. But there's something that happens when you are consistently in these spaces where nobody looks like you. It's easy to say, oh, well, maybe they're just lucky that they got me, right? I'm different, and they're lucky to have me. But the odds are you're probably going to say things like, oh, my God, what am I doing here? They're going to find out who I really am. They're going to find out that I don't belong here. I don't fit in here. And eventually you say that enough that you'll find ways to self-sabotage yourself and make it true. Who's ever done that? Have you ever talked yourself out of applying for a job just by reading the job description? Raise your hand if you've done that. Because these are real things, and I'm sorry, because apparently my job is to get you guys excited for today. So I didn't realize that when I said yes to this. I didn't realize Aaron was really smart by not telling me that in the beginning. He just said, hey, I just want you to come speak. But he did not say that I would be the keynote and that I would be the opening speaker. So I need you guys to work with me here, okay? The thought of saying, even though in maybe small pieces of your mind, you say, oh yeah, you know what, I am qualified for that. I have worked hard. I have gone to all the right networking events. I have met the right people. I have built my social capital. I have proven myself in certain areas of professionalism and in my personal relationships. Logically, I belong wherever the hell I want to be. However, that little voice, that little self-sabotage, that little imposter in your mind can convince you otherwise. I've named mine. If you struggle with cuss words, I'm sorry. I cuss a little bit. We started calling her Doom and Gloom. Her name is Doom and Gloom. Some of my closest friends have just shortened it to D&G. Oh, D&G is back. And they notice it because when I start talking, there's ways that I'll start talking about myself. And I'll start whining and lamenting and I don't understand, and why do they ask me, and I can't do this, and I've learned to build a team of people around me. This is what we all have to do, guys, because we can't do it all. We can't do it all for the outside world, and we can't do it all for ourselves. And you have to build a team of people around you who will recognize when you're self-sabotaging. And I have those friends. And they hold mirrors up to me and tell me, bitch, you're the shit. You are. Yeah, right? And so when I start feeling, like, God damn, I've set myself up for this one, I'm gonna fail. This is bad. Why did I say I could do this? I have to remind myself, that's not me that's talking. That's not the girl that grew up in Bluefield, West Virginia, eating beans for dinner, sometimes for 7 days out of the week, with a father who worked in the coal mines, the dirtiest, grittiest job that you can imagine, dangerous at that. Two very hardworking parents that no matter how many hours they were away from us. See, my brother and I were latchkey kids before there was a term for that, because we had no choice. My parents worked 12 to 14 hours a day, every day. Every day. And there still was never enough of anything. And so my father eventually said, I have to do better for my family. We're gonna go to Pittsburgh, home of the steel mills. I'm telling y'all how old I am without telling you how old I am. This was back in the 70s, when the steel mills were booming, great blue-collar jobs that fed their families and took care of families. And my dad said, I'm done with the steel mills, I'm done with the coal mines. He had a cousin that was here that said, come up and I'll get you a job. So we packed up our car, my mom, my dad, me, my brother, and a dog, and everything else that would fit, and we ended up here in Pittsburgh. And if you're not from Pittsburgh, when you come through the Liberty Tunnels, that skyline, isn't it beautiful? You cannot help but to be full of hope and expectation when you see that skyline. And it was beautiful. And I was a 9-year-old child in 1978. You do the math. And I still vividly remember the first time I saw that. And I felt, wow, this is gonna be huge. And 5 minutes later, our car was coming down the off-ramp to the Boulevard of the Allies, and the car shut off. And it was the beginning of a very big wake-up call for me, a very clear and vivid understanding of poverty and how it impacts you. and how it makes you view yourself as a person. We ended up homeless our very first night in the city of Pittsburgh. We slept in that car on the Boulevard of the Allies, and for us as children, that was an adventure. We're in this big city. Listen, guys, I come from Bluefield, West Virginia, and if you've never been through Bluefield, West Virginia, I can tell you coming into downtown Pittsburgh was wow. It's huge. And sleeping in that car was familiar to something that we had done for years. We slept in tents. We always went camping. I am still an avid camper. I love it. But sleeping downtown Pittsburgh is very different than sleeping in a camp in Bluefield, West Virginia. So my father the next morning got up, went to use the pay phones. Oh yes, there were no cell phones back then. Went and found a pay phone to call his cousin and say, "We're here, I'm ready to go get this job." And by the way, we were supposed to be living with his family until he got on his feet and he and my mother found jobs. Well, I can tell you, my father came back to the car angry as hell. He was angry because he found out that this job that his cousin promised him was not here. There was no job. And my father is a very stubborn man. And he is a man that will cut his nose off to spite his face. I know that's an old saying. Who's ever heard it? Yeah, good. And so he said, "We're not going to live with them. We'll figure it out. We're going to stay in this car. It won't take me long to get a job." And you know why my father felt that? He had never been out of work a day in his life. He was a hardworking man, had never been out of work, but didn't get a job in a few days. Didn't get a job in a week. Didn't get a job in 2 weeks. So going on the third week of living in a car in downtown Pittsburgh on the Boulevard of the Allies, the police knocked on the window one morning. My dad was already out. He and my mother had been taking turns looking for work, and my mother was in the car with us, and the police knocked on the window with a woman. I'll never forget her, actually. Her face. She was a short, very tiny woman with really, really sharp green piercing eyes and the tightest damn ponytail I've ever seen that pulled her eyes back. And I found out sooner rather than later that she was with the Children, Youth, and Protective Services. And she had brought the police with her to remove my brother and I from my parents' custody. Because apparently, living in a car is frowned upon in the city of Pittsburgh. And so what I will tell you about trauma and how it impacts you and all of your thoughts about yourself moving forward. The first trauma I remember is being snatched out of my mother's arms, my screaming, crying mother, who is terrified because these people, these strangers, are taking her children away, and she doesn't know what to do because my father is off looking for work. And through the years, so eventually, so I don't want to make this, because it gets better. Look at me. It got better. I'm good. So I don't want to make you guys sad, but I need you to understand how experiences also contribute to this thing called imposter syndrome. Your experiences and where you come from and what you've seen and what you've heard and what's been done to you starts to form these thoughts in your head about what you deserve. And so I was pretty much never the same after that, and neither was my family. A couple of weeks later, our family did get reunited by the help of the Salvation Army and the United Way. They helped our family find housing, but we were never the same. My mother and father divorced about a year later. My mother could not forgive my father for bringing her to a strange city and making her lose her children, even if it was for a brief period in time. And so they struggled, and then my mother became a single parent of 2 children in a strange city where she knew nobody. She had left her entire life behind in West Virginia, and she had to rebuild and never was able to rebuild a support system. And that impacted our family severely. It impacted me as a person Because oddly, as a child, hearing your mother cry in another room because she's not able to feed you, somehow you feel like that's your fault. I felt like it was my fault because I couldn't help, and if she didn't have to take care of me, she wouldn't be so sad. Child's mind. I also had a very thick West Virginia accent as a child. You ever heard anybody from West Virginia talk? It's funny. I think it's cute. Some people think it's cute. But I worked really hard to get rid of it. It still comes out from time to time, usually when I'm angry. But I worked really hard to get rid of it because I got teased relentlessly in school. I got chased home from school more times than I can count because kids didn't like the way I talked. They didn't like that I was extremely smart and that I was always a kid who liked to raise my hand because I knew the answers. Oh, me, pick me. Well, they beat that out of me real quick. And eventually I became a child who didn't speak at all to anybody because I figured if I would just be quiet, nobody could see me. And if they couldn't see me, they wouldn't try to beat me up. And for about a year, I didn't speak at all. All of these things are leading up to where we are today. High school was difficult because the damage had already been done regarding my self-esteem. I had zero self-esteem, zero. I see pictures of me now when I was a kid, and I was kind of cute. I know that now, but then I thought I was hideous. I thought everything about me was hideous. My voice, the way I looked, the clothes. Now, the clothes were hideous. The clothes were bad. The clothes and the shoes were awful because I lived with a parent who thought it was more important to feed and shelter me than worry about if I was keeping up with the trends, and guess what? She was right. But as a teenager, I would have rather starved than wear some of the things that I went to school with and have to suffer the consequences. By the time I was 22 years old, I had 5 children. Yep, take time to let that sink in. Had a set of twins at 17, and basically had a kid every other year after that until I was 22 years old. A direct connection to my low self-esteem and self-worth. I eventually got into what people in Pittsburgh would like to call a gang. I can tell you it wasn't really a gang. It was just a group of people that gravitated to each other who all felt the same way about themselves. And unfortunately, in that gang, I sold drugs, I carried a gun. I was a pretty dangerous person, society would say. But on the inside, I was still that smart, sensitive, intelligent, thoughtful little girl. But I didn't see a use for her. There was no place for her. There was no place for her. And even as I was in neighborhoods running rampant, causing havoc, I knew I didn't belong there. I was an imposter even then. That wasn't what I was supposed to be doing. But I didn't know what else to do. I had given up on that thought, and those teachers who told me in 4th grade that I was an amazing writer and that I was gonna go far and I was gonna do special things, and I would get so angry at them because how dare you set me up for that disappointment? That's never gonna happen for me. And that little voice, that little gloom and doom bitch, she was telling me, this is all you're gonna be. You're gonna be a mother of 5 in poverty, living in welfare, selling drugs, carrying guns, and eventually you're gonna die or you're gonna go to prison. Those were my options. That was it. That was all I saw for myself. And eventually I got arrested because that's what happens when you decide to sell drugs. I got lucky by getting arrested because I could have been killed. I should have been killed multiple times, but God saved me. He sent me to jail. I got lucky again because I went in front of a judge who I had never met before, never saw him a day in my life. And this day that I was going to court, that I was told by my attorney that you're going to have to go to jail today, you're going to do a mandatory minimum sentence, and good luck. I had made arrangements with my friend, my best friend at the time, who agreed to take custody of my children because we knew I was going to jail that day. I said goodbye to my children. I went to court, and I sat in the courtroom and waited for the judge to hand down his verdict. Oddly, though, the day of the hearing, the morning of the hearing, was myself, two of my friends, and my attorney sitting in this courtroom waiting for me to get my sentence and get carted off to Muncie Correctional Prison for 18 months. That was going to be my sentence. And the judge, it was really strange. He was up on the bench, and he had his little reading glasses on, and he was looking over them, looking at me, reading this file, looking at me. There was nobody else in the courtroom, so I knew he was talking, looking, and reading my case, and I was petrified. I was petrified, knowing I am leaving my children. This man is about to send me to prison, and there's nothing I can do about it. And guess what? I probably deserve it. Maybe. But something happened. And at 9 o'clock exactly, he called the case to order, and he said to the prosecuting attorney, I'm ready to go. Let's go. Let's get started. And the prosecutor said, well, I just need a few more minutes, Your Honor, because my witnesses are not here yet. They're downstairs signing in. And the judge said, well, I'm ready to go. This young lady's ready to go. You guys are ready to send her off to prison. Let's go. And he and the DA went back and forth a little bit. And in my mind, I've left my body. I'm just waiting to get carted off. And then I hear the judge say, I'm dismissing this case because you're not prepared, and you are insistent on sending this person to jail, but you're not prepared. Case is dismissed. And I'm like, what is going on? I'm looking around like, wait a minute. And he and the judge go back and forth a little bit, and the DA says, well, Your Honor, that's not fair. I'm going to just refile the charges tomorrow. And the judge says, no, you're not, because now it's dismissed with prejudice. You guys know what that means? Dismissed with prejudice means you can never bring this case back before me. And I literally walked out of that courtroom feeling like the most blessed, grateful, thankful person on the planet, because now I had an opportunity to change my life. I had an opportunity to do what that judge did without knowing me, without ever saying a word to me. What he was saying to me is, I'm gonna give you a chance to do something with your life. And I felt it. And I did it. I never turned back. And let me just be clear, there were plenty of days that I wanted to, because it was hard. It was hard. I had these 5 people that I was responsible for. I was not educated. I had zero support system. And I had this bitch in the back of my head telling me I didn't deserve any more than what I had today. So I had to fight all of these things. And I went to college shortly, for a little while. Because not only did I try to go to college, I was raising 2 kids. I had a job and a half, 5 kids, no support system, and I was trying to go to school full time. One of the things wasn't gonna work, and college was it. So it's very funny that I thought that when I was unable to get that college degree, that literally I was 3 credits away from getting, that I thought my life was over. And again, doom and gloom in my head was saying, see, you're not gonna be able to, why did you even try? You're not gonna be able to do this. This is not where people with your life, this is not where people like you go. This is not where you end up. Why are you trying to fight where you're really supposed to be? Why do you keep trying to show up to these places that you don't deserve and you don't belong? And it was funny because I kept showing up because there were people who kept telling me otherwise. You know, I would take these jobs and people would say things like, man, you're talented. If you do this, this, and that, you can do that. And I would be like, oh. But then again, my friend Doom and Gloom over here was like, oh, you're listening to them again. Why don't you just listen to me? I'm telling you, don't do it. There would be promotions that I would be offered that I would talk myself out of applying for. There would be jobs that I knew I could do, but in the back of my head, I wouldn't apply because I didn't think I could do it. And I stayed stuck for a very, very long time. And eventually, I decided, I'm gonna do it anyway. Because if I fail, what is the worst that's gonna happen? What is the worst that's gonna happen? No? The word no? How powerful is the word no? And so what I will tell you is because I find, and trust me, she still hangs out with me. She's just not as powerful as she used to be. She's not as powerful as she used to be because I have more power. Because now I've started to do the things that I never thought that I would do. Yes, I am the executive director of a nonprofit here in the city of Pittsburgh. Yes, I am the owner of a consulting firm that other nonprofits pay me to tell them how to do what they do. And yes, I just started a media company, although I know absolutely nothing about media. But I did produce a documentary last year that is absolutely fantastic. I am asked to speak on the stage locally, nationally, and as of next month, internationally. And I will continue to say yes, even when I'm terrified. And all of the Piper Creative crew that met me this morning would be able to testify that I was terrified until the minute I got on the stage. Because what's the worst that could happen to me? Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate you. I appreciate it. You guys are gonna make me cry. Don't make me cry, my makeup looks too good.
How'd we do? Make a good choice with the opener? That was me just fishing for a little more applause. This thing stuck, so I'm gonna stand down here, keep Tammy up on stage. I wanna make sure that if there were any questions that you had, anything you wanted to build off of the amazing talk that she just gave, the mic is right up there. Someone's got to break the seal, be the first question. Yes, Beth.
Thank you so much. Your story is so inspiring, and I heard the interview with Aaron on the podcast, so I know a little bit more about it. I'm curious about when those few people here and there would tell you differently than what your head was telling you. How did you know where to find the resources? It's one thing for somebody to say you could do this, quite another for you to find out how to do it. So I'm just curious about, even if it's just like one example.
So that's a great question because I'm still figuring that out. The one thing that I've realized is extremely important if you're trying to overcome this imposter syndrome thing, and I think there's a million other names that we could call it, but the very first thing is being extremely transparent with yourself and then with others. If you are, so let's talk about my example. If I was constantly worried about whether someone was going to out me for my past, and it's a dark, ugly past, there's no qualms about that. If I was consistently worried about if people were gonna find out, right? And there's been jobs that I have been afraid to apply for because I have an arrest record. I've been convicted of some stuff. If I was worried about if people were gonna find out, I wouldn't try anything. I'm not worried about that anymore because I tell people. I'm extremely transparent. There is no bone, there's no skeletons that can fall out of the closet because I've already opened the door. That's the first thing. I am very open and honest about what my weaknesses and my strengths are. And I've learned that I have to build a team of people around me who can make up for those weaknesses. That's tough to do. It's tough to acknowledge where you're weak, right? And for some of us, it's even tough to talk about where we have the strengths. But being honest about where you're weak is how you build your team. If I am telling people this thing haunts me, my fear of failure haunts me, then I tell people that, and then they can help fill in the blanks. They can continue to hold that mirror up to me and say, okay, you might fail over here, but look where you haven't failed. Look at the things that you've done that you never thought you'd be able to do. And honestly, just try to be fearless. What is the worst that could happen if somebody says no? Your feelings might be hurt, but you're not going to die. You'll be fine. So I hope that answered your question. Maybe? Okay.
Hello, I had a question. Any of the people that you were doing the gangbanging with back in the day, now that you've ascended to a much greater position in life, do you help any of those people out, or do you have any contact with them at all? Or is that life just completely done and you don't see any of those people whatsoever in any
No,
way, shape, or
thank you
form?
for asking that. So I'll tell you that a lot of the people are dead. Some of them are in prison. And some of them work for me, right? Because I made it a mission to always reach back to the people that were there for me. So for instance, the woman who offered to take my 5 children into her care, she didn't have to do that. She's been my friend for 30 years. And every single opportunity I get, I make sure she gets it too. Because I have to honor that part of my life. I have to honor the people that were there with me and actually who helped catapult me to the position that I'm in right now. It has absolutely nothing to do with profession or anything that has to do with the people who help build the person that I am are the people that I will consistently and forever honor and bring them along with me. So if I got a job, she's got a job. Good? All right.
You mentioned 2 different groups of people, the people you run around selling drugs with and the people who've been supporting you. And just to kind of expand on that last point, like what are the types of people or the qualities of a person that you look to who are being supportive and building you up, and the qualities of people who are bringing you down, bringing you to those negative things, so that maybe we can learn to evaluate those kind of people in our own lives?
Right. So I will start with the people who try to bring me down. Let's just be honest. There's a lot of things about me that people hate. I deal with people and dirty looks and sour words and stuff all the time, but none of that has anything to do with me. It's not my stuff. It's their stuff. If you hate me because I'm Muslim, so what? I'll pray for you. Sorry. If you hate me because I'm black, nothing I can do about that. I'm going to always be black, and I love it. Those things don't bother me. I don't waste my energy over there. Where I spend 100% of my time and focus is working on the people who want more, who want to continue to pour into me, and who are going to work along beside me as we work to pour into other people. That's 100% my focus in life at this point.
Hey, Tammy, like Beth, I've definitely watched your story several times from the podcast and from the YouTube videos. Being someone who grew up in generational poverty, I had the opportunity to mentor a young man from D.C., and what I found interesting, I sort of grew up in poverty a little bit myself, not generational poverty, is that not only did he have struggles in school, but he has struggles at home. And do you have any type of advice that you would give folks that are in those types of situations where their family life is messed up, where their school life is messed up, on how they could better themselves and get themselves out of that trouble?
Yes. Thank you for bringing that up, because that's important, right? The work that we do at Circles, at the nonprofit that I direct, is directly connected to answering that question. It's one of the things that I know personally and from doing the work that I do in helping families in their journey to moving towards self-sufficiency and self-sustainability is the need to provide a different perspective. If every bit of your life is focused in this thing, it is very hard to see that light at the end of the tunnel. It is very hard to believe that that light even belongs to you. It's important for young people to be exposed to a different perspective, because the longer you are exposed to poverty trauma, the more you believe that this is exactly where you are going to be, and there's nothing else that a teacher or even a parent could say. This is what I see. So no matter what you're telling me, I don't believe that I'm ever going to be more than this. And we have to consistently pour into these children and create opportunities to change their perspective. Guys, I'm struggling. I'm happy that I made it through this speech. I'm going to be honest with Aaron. I almost called him last night and told him I could not be here today, because I'm so devastated by the death and the murder of a 17-year-old child whose life has seen, it's an insignificant life of a 17-year-old baby. And when I think about who I was at 17, I didn't have the frontal lobe to make the type of decisions that we all have the luxury at this stage of our life to say, well, you shouldn't have done that, and you shouldn't have done that. There's a lot of things a lot of us shouldn't have done that did not warrant death. So the way that we counteract this horrible thing and try to prevent it from happening to more children is we create opportunities for a different perspective. We show them that just because this is where you're starting off, that's not where you have to end up.
How does a guy like me try to get more involved, get on a stage, and try to have a more impact in the local community to help people, go from zero to hero, right? And that's part of God's plan for me.
That's a great question. And let's just give him a hand, right? Because the things that he's talking about overcoming, these are not easy things to overcome. And I know, guys, it's really easy when these are not your experiences. It's easy to say, well, if you would just do that, or if you would just do that, or if you, well, why didn't they just do that? If you haven't walked in the shoes of somebody who has gone through these things, it is very difficult to understand it. I get it. It's difficult for me to understand what it is being rich, right? What is it like having a driver and not having to be mad in traffic, right? These are the things that I don't understand. But what I would say to you, sir, is continue to tell your story. Continue to tell it to anybody that will listen. Reach out to organizations that you know are serving the population of people that you want to serve. And that's going to take some research. And quite honestly, it's going to take you building relationships, because folks who are hurting and organizations who are serving this population, we're really protective of our people. And if we don't trust you, even if you have the best of intentions, we want to vet you first. I want to vet you before I'm going to put you in a room with the people that I love and serve. So building those relationships with the leaders of organizations that actually are doing this work in the communities would be my suggestion for your first step. And just continue to tell your story and talk and write that book and continue to tell your story. And eventually people are going to hear it, they're going to connect to it, they're going to believe it, and they're going to want you in their spaces talking to their families and their children.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Give it up for Tammy Thompson, everybody.
Thanks for watching this video. Please let us know what you think in the comments. Good, bad, or indifferent. We want to hear from you.